For true crime junkies, we all know the feeling of relief that penetrates a courtroom when a verdict of guilty is read out by the jury. The case of OJ Simpson is probably one of the most divided trials in history, with no one really knowing what the verdict would be or what it should be for that matter. The case of OJ Simpson is one that shocked the nation, leaving people wondering, is it really possible to get away with murder? On the morning of June 13th, 1994, Orenthal James Simpson had settled into his hotel room in Chicago, Illinois. He had traveled there late the night before to participate in a golf tournament. He was fast asleep when the familiar tone of his cell phone began to ring. He listened as a police officer from back home, Los Angeles, California, broke the news to him about his ex-wife's murder. Nicole Brown Simpson and a friend, Ron Goldman, had been slashed violently with their necks almost detached from their heads. Whoever did this was filled with rage, a rage that the police feared would strike again. OJ was too shocked to speak, according to the officer. He asked very few questions. It was a relatively short-lived phone call. OJ checked out of his Chicago hotel room and hopped on a flight back to Los Angeles, determined to find the person that did this to his wife. When he arrived home, chaos would break loose. The Los Angeles Police Department wanted OJ Simpson to come in for questioning as soon as possible. They weren't yet sure of the timeline of Nicole's death, but the most important information always came from the spouse, not to mention that the suspect list always begins with close family members. They knew that Nicole had made criminal reports about OJ previously, reports that detailed domestic violence against her. OJ's questioning lasted about 30 minutes. His strangely calm demeanor on the phone had alarmed them towards his guilt, but they needed more. Unfortunately, the LAPD doesn't have the greatest reputation for their handling of cases, so OJ's questioning didn't yield much result. They mainly asked him about the deep cut he had on his hand, to which he easily explained away. He calmly explained that he had cut it while smashing a glass in anger after hearing of his ex-wife's gruesome end. When confronting him about the blood that they found in his house and car, Simpson had an answer for that too, an answer that the police never thought twice about. Simpson had switched his story, now saying that he had cut his finger unknowingly the night before, not when the police called him about his ex-wife. According to him, he had cut it after his daughter's dance recital, when he was frantically leaving the house on a mission to buy flowers for her. Instead of questioning him further about this mismatch of information, they moved on to other questions about he and his ex-wife's relationship, leaving the suspicious timeline in the dust. Fortunately for the LAPD, they had gathered a search warrant to search OJ Simpson's house and car, collecting the blood they had spoken about in the interview with OJ. The DNA that was found at the house matched the DNA found at the scene of Nicole and Ron. To the investigators' pleasant surprise, they also found a black glove at Simpson's house. They hadn't put the pieces together at first, but quickly realized that there was one just like it at Nicole's house. They hurried back to the station to compare the evidence. Finding that the two gloves they had recovered were a perfect pair, their hearts stopped as they realized the gravity of what they had discovered, evidence of Simpson's guilt. Robert Shapiro, OJ Simpson's lawyer, received a call from the LAPD accusing his client of killing his ex-wife. Shapiro listened to the officer speak, realizing that OJ would be arrested and charged. There was no avoiding it. Instead of being flooded with news media and sensationalism at Simpson's arrest, Shapiro wanted to make the whole ordeal as painless as possible. After much deliberation, they finally came to an agreement on how OJ's arrest would be handled. On the morning of June 17th, members of the LAPD police force waited patiently at 9:58 a.m. for the arrival of Orenthal Simpson. He was set to turn himself in at 10 a.m., and he had 120 seconds remaining. The countdown seemed to take forever, and after those 120 seconds ticked by, no one walked through the door. The officers weren't unreasonable, though. They gave him some leeway. Maybe there was traffic. Maybe he was a tad late leaving his house. But when the hours kept passing without a familiar face, a squad car swiftly made its way to Simpson's home. Upon arrival, the house seemed almost ghostly, with Simpson's white Bronco missing from the driveway. There was not a soul in sight, with the only thing out of place being a piece of paper with scribbled words on it. Words which closed with, "Don't feel sorry for me. I've had a great life, great friends. Please think of the real OJ, and not this lost person. Thanks for making my life special. I hope I helped yours. Peace and love, OJ." Had he really committed suicide? What were their next steps? They pondered the note, considering its validity. No matter what, dead or alive, they needed to find this man. At 1:50 p.m., the LAPD issued an official statement during a press conference, where they stated that they were actively looking for OJ as a suspect in a murder investigation, and another at 3 p.m. At this point, hours had gone by without a shred of information. Today, my office filed murder charges against OJ Simpson for the deaths of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Lyle Goldman. As of this time, approximately 3 p.m., nobody knows where he is. At 5:51 p.m., after hours of hopeless waiting, there was finally a break in the case. The LAPD received a call. "This is AC. I have OJ in the car," he says. "He's still alive, but he has a gun to his head. He just wants to see his mother. Let me get him to his house." The call was traced to a nearby highway, and the officers knew what had to be done. The chase began. After a 45-minute pursuit, OJ eventually turned to the driveway of his own home to surrender, knowing that he could not escape the close watch of the Los Angeles police. The police eventually arrested Simpson, searching his car for any evidence they could use in a trial to come. They found $8,570, a fake beard, and a mustache, a loaded gun, and a passport. OJ was trying to escape without a trace. Everything that had occurred over the day only strengthened the case against him. The confidence that OJ would spend his life in prison grew with this new evidence. They were ready to charge him. Despite his attempt to flee, Simpson still pled not guilty to the crime of ending the life of his ex-wife, patiently waiting for 6 months to see his day in court. January 24th, 1995. Every media outlet in the area was swarming the courthouse, preparing for what would become known as the Super Bowl of murder trials. Everyone wanted a piece of the action. A celebrity on trial for such a vicious crime, they had to see how this would unfold. The opening statements would set the tone for the trial, with the prosecution saying the sole reason for OJ ending the life of Nicole. If he couldn't have her, no one could. He had a history of domestic violence with Nicole, and he couldn't bear the thought of her being with another man. He killed her in a fit of rage, ending the jealousy that had invaded his every thought, once and for all. The defense had a different story. It was completely impossible for OJ to have committed the vile acts that Nicole and Ron had endured. He had arthritis in his hands, and nowhere near the skill that would have been needed to pull off a double homicide. The evidence against him was corrupted, circumstantial at best, and contaminated with bias. Over the next 99 days, there would be countless events that would shock the jury, leaving everyone questioning whether OJ would receive consequence for the unspeakable crimes he had committed. Firstly, the prosecution would ask Simpson to try on the gloves that were found at both the crime scene and his house. When the gloves wouldn't fit his hands, the members of the prosecution took a huge blow. They hadn't thought about the fact that the gloves could have shrunk due to the blood that was on them. The scales tipped the other way when the conversation about OJ's physical health was called into question. The defense had said that it was impossible for OJ to have committed these acts, as he had the physical ability of Tarzan's grandfather. The prosecution were gleeful about this central argument, as they excitedly showed videos of OJ golfing and participating in intense workouts. To the prosecution's main delight, OJ had been shown completing an exercise that involved punching his hands outward, to where he said that someone might try the exercise on their wife. It was all up in the air at this point. No one knew what the outcome would be, and they sat on the edge of their seats as the jury stood to read out the verdict. "We find the defendant not guilty." Shock and dismay electrified the courtroom as everyone realized that OJ Simpson had likely gotten away with murder. In subsequent interviews, OJ stated how he would dedicate the rest of his life searching for the real killer of his wife, but many, including Nicole's family, believe that his search need not go any further than the mirror. OJ Simpson's case would go down in history as the celebrity who got away with murder. People have wondered whether it was his status that got him off, or the police's negligence, or the real truth. Was OJ really not guilty? What do you think? Did he do it? Or is there someone else out there that the police should be looking for? Let us know in the comments down below. As always, if you want to see more videos like this, please like, comment, and hit the bell notification. Until next time.